Lines of traffic are long and tempers are likely getting shorter for drivers on the Trans-Canada Highway close to the border between Nova Scotia and New Brunswick. Right now, vehicles continue to block the highway right at the border in a protest over Nova Scotia's pandemic travel restrictions. So take a look at this video that has come into us earlier this morning. We have Brett Ruskin on the scene. He's going to join us momentarily. But this is what it looks like. Protesters who are upset at Nova Scotia's decision to keep quarantine rules in place for New Brunswickers and for people who travel into Nova Scotia from there. Now, this is a look at the New Brunswick side, not far from the Nova Scotia border. That's from our CBC News colleague Shane McGee, who sent us that photo just last hour and says that RCMP were stopping traffic ahead of him. Nobody going anywhere there. Nova Scotia is open to travelers from PEI and to travelers from Newfoundland and Labrador, just not from New Brunswick, and we'll explain why. Brett Ruskin right there near the border and on the story for us, covering things all morning and updating us hour by hour. So let's begin right there. What's the situation now at 9 o'clock Atlantic, Brett?
Well, Heather, I can tell you that, typically I wouldn't be standing in the middle of the Trans-Canada Highway, but that is the situation we find ourselves in now. You can see behind me protesters speaking with RCMP officers here. This highway is shut down by protesters, has been for the last number of hours. And so you mentioned folks who are being stopped on the New Brunswick side, people being stopped on the Nova Scotia side as well, including some additional protesters who say that they want to come and join the group who are not being allowed to come here. Along with all the rest of the traffic that wants to come through this checkpoint, this blockade here. The one group of individuals that are being allowed through, according to the protesters, are nurses and doctors who might live in Nova Scotia and work at a New Brunswick hospital. Those folks are being allowed through, but other than that, protesters here are doing a complete blockade across both sides of the highway here at the Trans-Canada at the border between New Brunswick and Nova Scotia. Heather?
So these must be people who thought they were going to be inside a new Atlantic bubble as of today. But that changed with the Nova Scotia decision. What is behind the protest, Brett?
Well, yeah, we spoke yesterday, Heather, you and me, saying, hey, it's going to be exciting today because people will be able to travel back and forth across New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, visit with family members they haven't seen for a long time without the need to self-isolate. That was the plan in the morning. At 3 o'clock, Premier Ian Rankin, Premier of Nova Scotia, had a news conference, and he said, listen, we don't feel that it's safe to allow New Brunswickers or people that are in New Brunswick to come to Nova Scotia without self-isolation. So they've enacted rules that have 3 different levels of self-isolation requirements, depending on if you've had no vaccine, if you've had 1 shot, or if you've had 2 shots. Regardless, you will have to isolate when you come here. And so the protesters aren't happy about that. But here is Ian Rankin, the Premier of Nova Scotia, speaking yesterday at that news conference.
It's just not feasible for us to take the risk levels with all Canadians traveling in through to New Brunswick, and we just can't take the same level of risk that New Brunswick is prepared to take right now.
And so to kind of dig into what he's saying, because there would be an open border here, New Brunswick is open to all of Canada as long as you have 1 vaccine. So that would mean that Nova Scotia would have to effectively assume that same policy. And so the situation here would be the same situation there. Now, the reason why there's a protest, not the reason, but one of the people who was egging on the protesters is an opposition MLA, member of Legislative Assembly. Here's what she had to say, what she posted on Facebook yesterday afternoon.
Premier Rankin just slapped the people in Cumberland County and the people of New Brunswick in the face. And at the 11th hour, Premier Rankin, in some vendetta or some battle he is having with our neighboring premier, has reneged.
And now battle is her words. We did hear from the Premier saying that he tried to reach out to Premier Blaine Higgs in New Brunswick to have a phone conversation with him to discuss the different policies between the provinces. Premier Ian Rankin says that phone call simply did not happen. Heather?
What could happen next in this, Brett? They look like they're set to stay for the foreseeable future.
Well, some portable toilets just arrived. They were delivered. Police tried to stop them from delivering them, but they were in fact delivered. Protesters say that they have more reinforcements coming from the New Brunswick side, from the Nova Scotia side as well. We'll see if police stop them. And the protesters say that they're going to stay here as long as they can, as long as the police let them, or until Premier Ian Rankin changes his policy, which he has said that he will not be doing. So it will be interesting to see how this develops and whether or not police will take action to break up this protest to once again allow the flow of traffic along the Trans-Canada.